Projectile Motion Series M&M Quiz 2177. Welcome to hecanhelp.com. Points P and Q are at the same vertical height with respect to point A. The vertical velocity vector component at P is 5 meters per second, positive 5 meters per second. Question: what is the vertical velocity vector component at point Q? Assume no air resistance and constant acceleration. Assume change in y from P to Q is equal to 0. So is it A, B, C, or D? If acceleration is a constant, we can use equations of kinematics. And one of those equations is the final velocity is given by initial velocity along the vertical plus acceleration along the vertical times time. We want to know the final velocity along the vertical at point Q. So this is from P to Q. So what is the initial point? P. What is the final point? Q. We know the initial vertical velocity component at point P, and that is positive 5. We know the acceleration along the vertical, negative 9.8. But we don't know time. So for that, what do? We use change in y from P to Q. So from P to Q, what do we know from P to Q? Delta y is equal to 0. Delta y is equal to initial vertical component times time plus 1/2 acceleration along the vertical times time squared. Delta y is equal to 0. Initial velocity along the vertical is positive 5. Time is unknown. 1/2 negative 9.8 times t squared. Divide throughout by t and you get 0 is equal to 5 minus 4.9. 9.8 divided by 2 is 4.9, and because of the negative you get minus 4.9 t. T squared becomes t, from which you get t is equal to 5 divided by 4.9, and that is 1.02 seconds. Once we have time is equal to 1.02 seconds, we can go to v final y is equal to v initial y plus acceleration along the vertical times time. Initial velocity along the vertical is positive 5, acceleration along the vertical is negative 9.8, times time is 1.02. from which you get negative 5 meters per second. It makes sense. At point P, the vertical component is pointing up. At the same height, at point Q, the vertical component is pointing down. They're equal in magnitude but opposite in direction. Please don't forget, they have to be at the same vertical height. Substitute all those numbers. Time is 1.02. V final y is equal to v initial y plus acceleration along the vertical times time. So this is v initial y, acceleration along the vertical times time, and you get negative 5 meters per second. And this is George Mathew signing off. Good luck.